Think of the type of person we see on pedestals. It's the old war heroes and emperors, Benjamin Franklin, Venus de Milo, people who have excelled, who we look up to for their great deeds, or who were crafted with such beauty and artistry that we still admire them years later. People on pedestals aren't real. They're immaculate, carved statues, raised up above us because they're better than us. No longer fallible humans, but perfect, static statues. Now, this is only to be expected with figures from the past, but I think that we do this to each other. Think of someone you know who's unbelievably impressive. It's the student with an incredible internship, or who can squat twice their body weight. It's the guy who ran away to China. The woman who can climb more mountains than you can name, or the man who hosts beautiful dinner parties. I claim that when we meet these people with worldly accomplishments or interesting hobbies or who are generally fantastic, we label them as those who have achieved. We take complex, relatable, flawed humans who have struggled and had lucky breaks and made mistakes, and we flatten them into a list of accomplishments. And in doing so, we inadequately reflect how those achievements were made and lose sight of the uncertainty and hard decisions that led them to that point. Now, I can't speak for everyone, but I can tell you how this has manifested itself in my life. About a year and a half ago, I had just finished a software development internship at Google. Back on campus, I got coffee with a sophomore, Aaron, to talk about internships and career paths in computer science. During our conversation, a few things stood out. He was nervous. He had brought a typed list of questions. He was convinced that an internship at that company was the pinnacle of achievement, the goal that every student in his position should aspire to. I had never met anyone who had treated the things I had done with such high esteem, and it was unnerving. I'm aware of my own humanity. When I was applying for the internship, I got one of the interview questions wrong. How could this internship be the pinnacle of achievement if I had stumbled my way there? Why was Aaron so intimidated by me? Why didn't he see me the way I saw myself? As I tried to parse his reaction to me, I realized that I've done exactly the same thing. When I was a sophomore, Marshall was a senior, the coolest senior in the computer science department. He was a hacker and had a part-time job. He rode a motorcycle. He understood computer security, and in his free time, he mixed electronic music. I was crazy about him. I had a leadership crush on him, and a friend crush, and a crush crush. So when he asked me to take over the hackathon he had started, I was thrilled and totally unconvinced that I could ever pull off an event as good as his. My friends asked if we were dating because he treated when we went out for dinner. And I laughed because there's no way someone as fantastic as him could think of lowly old me as anything other than a subordinate, an underclassman. But listen to how I'm talking about him. Marshall's a real person, just like me and just like Aaron. But Aaron and I shared an instinctive reaction. On meeting someone we admired, we ignored any common ground we might have shared and treated that person as an idol. And I think that this kind of reaction can be incredibly damaging on an individual level. If the only thing you perceive about your mentors is their achievements, you lose sight of the struggles that they experienced to get to that point. When the only thing you perceive about your mentors is their achievements, you don't internalize the struggles that they experienced to get to that point. So when you start to make mistakes, or miss opportunities, or worry about important decisions, you already feel as though you're failing. Because when you look at your mentors, you don't see their process, only the end result. When I ran the hackathon that Marshall had started, it was a disaster. We achieved all of our high-level goals, but the things that went on behind the scenes, for a long time, I was disappointed in what I had produced. As soon as I put Marshall on that pedestal, I enabled myself to set wildly unrealistic standards for myself. Since my mentors never failed, I should never fail. You start to enter this permanent state of not living up to those high standards, but that entire state of mind is based on the false premise that your mentors have never made mistakes. I led the undergraduate computer science group on campus for 2 years. And one of our goals during that time period was to build the community within the department. After a couple months of emails, class visits, emails, events, emails, I became a figurehead, the name at the bottom of the weekly digest, which entirely defeated the point. If students were intimidated by me, they were less likely to come up to me with ideas, start casual conversations, or generally use the group as the community-building resource we hoped it would be. When new members are intimidated by older established members, it becomes harder to form meaningful connections. We built in opportunities for students to ask questions like, what do I put on my resume? How do I pass a technical interview? But more importantly, we wanted students to be able to ask harder questions. How do I deal with the overwhelming amount of work in this class? How do I handle being rejected from half a dozen internships? Is anyone else having as hard a time as I am? Asking vulnerable questions is only made more difficult when the people you're saying it to seem to have it all together. My sophomore year, my friend Amadou and I were working on a programming project together. And we were talking about how interesting all the seniors in the department were. We resolved that someday we were going to be the cool kids. But in doing so, we had already drawn a line between us and them, between the new kids and the ones who made things happen. We defined the seniors by a single facet, the things that they had done. Last summer, I spent some time traveling in the UK with a sketchbook and some watercolors, and no camera. I slept in tiny hostel beds, wandering a new direction every morning to sketch the people and the sights. I paused in the National Gallery to study Da Vinci, and I took a train up past Glasgow to paint Loch Lomond from a broken dock hanging out over the lake. Now I'd like you to pause and evaluate your reaction to that story. Was it idyllic? Was it something you would never do? Did you use it as a reason to separate me from you, the artist from the viewer, the traveler from the one who stayed behind? Did you put me on a pedestal? I could go on and tell you that we misplaced the family camera a week before I was supposed to leave. But the point is, there's a backstory to every interesting thing you've ever heard of, and knowing that it's there, even if you don't know what it is, can make that act seem a little more human. Doing this kind of automatic categorization, even to the most interesting, accomplished people you know, takes away some of their humanity. It defines them by a single facet. And in order to form meaningful relationships with those people and to set realistic standards for yourself, you need to see the pedestal for what it is. Not flawless, but cracked. It's made up of bricks and bits of sand and glue and a couple coats of paint. It's a conglomeration of successes and mistakes, of anxiety, gratitude, awesome mentors, embarrassing coffee dates, and unexpected opportunities. So think about the people you look up to. Newton said they were standing on the shoulders of giants, but those giants are really a lineup of past hackathon organizers and student leaders, of travelers and artists and makers and athletes, and you're next in a long series of talented, accomplished, fascinating, but fundamentally real people. Thank you.